I'm Chrissy Clark, and these are the 5 underreported stories that you need to know. Hey everyone, welcome back to Underreported Stories, where I cover the news that CNN, MSNBC, and Fox News fail to report or don't report on enough. This, as always, is a show based in logic, facts, and truth. And today we've got bombshell stories. First off, a Democrat in Pennsylvania has accused Kamala Harris's alleged top vice presidential pick of sexism and covering up sexual harassment. Crazy. We also saw big tech interfering in the 2024 election, seemingly, by omitting Trump from a key feature in Google searches, and there is financial fallout over the Olympics' decision to allow drag queens to be part of the opening ceremonies. Lots to get into, so let's do it. Like I said at the top, a Democrat has accused Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro of sexism and covering up sexual harassment. Shapiro is considered by almost any Democrat political strategist. He is considered one of the leading vice presidential picks for Kamala Harris's ticket. So here's the headline from the New York Post, and it says, Treasurer nominee Erin McClelland accused Shapiro, so this is the sitting governor of Pennsylvania, of sexism and covering up sexual harassment, and implied he wouldn't be satisfied playing second fiddle to Kamala Harris. She then went on in this tweet to say that she was supporting the governor of North Carolina instead, and we'll kind of get to that later. But this is Erin McClelland. She's, again, a Democrat running for treasurer of the state of Pennsylvania. And this is what she specifically said. She would not directly name Shapiro, again, Josh Shapiro, directly in her tweet, but she told the Post about the extent of the governor's presidential ambitions and just to be careful of him. This is what she said to the New York Post, quote, "If I were in Harris's situation, I would think very strongly about the difficulties that some women experience being in top-level positions and having men around them that have to be satisfied with being second, third, or answering to a woman." This woman, Erin McClelland, did not offer specific details on her accusation, but she did say that Shapiro, quote, swept sexual harassment under the rug. The Philadelphia Inquirer said she was likely referring to a sexual harassment scandal in Shapiro's office last year. Again, reading from the New York Post, it says, the scandal involved a woman who accused her boss, Shapiro legislative liaison Mike Vereb, of sexual harassment. The governor's office quietly reached a $295,000 settlement with her. As a quick aside, settlements of this nature are unfortunately normal. The harassment part, I will say, the harassment of this via this Mike Vereb guy, that part's not on Shapiro, but allowing him to stay in place was on Shapiro, and I do think that that is error-making at its finest. It says here, Vereb, who'd been close to Shapiro for decades, did not resign from his position until months after an internal complaint was filed. It should have been contingent on Shapiro to let the harasser go. Even if you sign a settlement agreement, doesn't matter, you're out. It just should be how it goes, but for whatever reason in America, that's just not always the case. It's just the woman in that case. And I think that's worth bringing to light. So good on this woman. But I went on to continue reading this article, and I did notice that McClellan had said some other things that kind of struck me as red flags. It's this part right here. It says, speaking to the Post, McClellan said she hasn't spoke to Street, which is another advisor, since criticizing Shapiro, but believes their relationship will be fine. Quote, someone is offended by a woman with a strong opinion. Color me thunderstruck. So this woman clearly has a very fourth wave, crazy feminist view of the world. And later on in the article, it kind of goes on to say that she joined 28 anti-school choice organizations to oppose Josh Shapiro as becoming the vice presidential nominee because he supports school choice. Just a ton of reasons why we see her as very, very left-wing, to the point where, let's be clear, Josh Shapiro is left-wing, but this woman is far more left-wing. And I think that's the motive here, right? This woman is insanely progressive and she wants to see someone as far left as herself represented in the vice presidential office. And you can view that as fortunate or unfortunate that Josh Shapiro is 100% left-wing. He has opinions that are completely outside of common sense, and he has a lot of problems. But in comparison to the other people that are being vetted for the position, he's not as bad of a leftist in comparison to other choices. And so I believe this hit piece wasn't about getting justice for the woman who was sexually harassed and had her harassment covered up by the governor, sitting governor, and potential vice president of the United States. That's not what this is about. This was about getting the most far left people elected. And listen, I gotta say, I'm watching from afar and just enjoying, because I'm totally fine with either outcome. Either a liberal like Josh Shapiro is on the ticket, and I will then know collectively in my heart of hearts that we have not lost our minds that much, or we have a far left winger on the ticket and it's easier for Republicans to run against that record. I don't even have a personal preference right now, but I do think that when we analyze stories like this one, it's just so important that we remember that opposition research like this, which is what it is always motivated by something that is worse for Republicans. It's the goal here is to bring in a more left-wing person, and that's not good for anybody. Another story that is motivated by being anti-Republican is this next story. Google has omitted the Trump assassination attempt from its featured search result. When you start typing into the search bar on Google, it's supposed to populate with the most common asked questions. And yesterday, people noticed that when you typed in assassination, Trump's name didn't pop up anywhere in the key feature. So I didn't want to test this out. I want to try it out now to see if Google has rectified this since getting the backlash. So let's do it. I've got Google pulled up here, and I'm going to type in assassination attempt. You can see here, look, on Truman, on Reagan, on Lenin, and I just want to note right here, these are all political figures, okay? On Donald, nothing. Trump, nothing. Obviously, it comes up when you click it, but there's nothing there in the population search bar. For more on this, let's read this New York Post write-up of all of this. So this article says a key Google feature is failing to show results for the attempted assassination of Donald Trump, drawing claims from the former president's son that big tech companies are trying to influence the election. It's also sparked a Senate investigation. So, like I said, users yesterday were surprised to learn that the search engine's autocomplete feature was omitting the result of assassination attempt Donald Trump. It just says assassination attempt Reagan, assassination attempt Archduke Franz Ferdinand, whatever. It'll keep going like that. And obviously this caught the attention of people because people are very trepidatious of big tech intervention in elections. So this article reads, the Post performed a series of test Google searches with the last names of U.S. presidents who were killed or faced attempts on their lives, followed by the letter Assassi, so ASSI, to see what autocomplete suggested, including JFK, Lincoln, Ford, Reagan, and Roosevelt. In each instance, a list of recommended search terms related to the attempts on their lives sprang into view. However, when that same thing was done for Trump, it yielded no additional terms from Google. So Google then, a spokesperson said, we're working on improvements, blah, blah, blah. But what they went on to really say was that following these terrible acts, people turned to Google to find high quality information, and we connected them with that. But also, well, where was it? Maybe it wasn't in this article, but at some point they did say that they had done this because they didn't want to deal with political violence that was springing from this or whatever. And so odd, but people, were doing screenshots and posting this all over social media yesterday. And so I believe it is Senator Roger Marshall, he is a Republican of Kansas, said he is launching an inquiry via the Senate to kind of understand what's going on here. To me, it's very clear that turning off an automatic feature on an event of this caliber is pointless. Like if you search for the Trump assassination attempt, It's going to give you news articles and follow-up articles and then information on how Trump's going back to Pennsylvania for a rally in the same town. Okay, nowhere in the search results is it giving someone like a play-by-play on how to conduct an assassination attempt on a president. So I don't really get Google's explanation of, well, we're just not trying to promote political violence. We're trying to make sure that, both sides are secure from ongoing political violence. Like, that's not happening. People are utilizing Google for information and news on the subject. And by seemingly suppressing that news and information in the lead up to an election, it looks like big tech intervention. What's worse is we saw this in 2020 when Twitter suppressed the Hunter Biden laptop story. We saw this again in 2020 and 2021 when Amazon took down books about vaccinations at the request of the Biden administration. Big tech, please tread lightly when it comes to election interference, because that's what this looks like, plain and simple. But before we move on to our next story, the VP of Search at Google put out a statement on X that I wanted to read. It's very interesting. It reads, "I'm the VP of Search at Google. I'm devastated to see the accusations regarding the reliability and accuracy of our product in relation to the upcoming presidential election." She went on to say, "You can be assured that our team is working hard to ensure that we don't let any reverence for accuracy be a distraction that gets in the way of our vision for the future." Now, I don't bring this up because she said anything of interest at all. She basically said oh, well, accurate is a subjective word. What's really interesting, and for the listening audience, I obviously would encourage you to go to YouTube or Rumble, wherever you would prefer to watch this, to see this picture, but she attached a picture of the team, which features 6 multiracial women. And I mean, I think that picture tells you everything you need to know. Not that these women are probably not, they're beautiful, they're probably very intelligent, they have jobs at Google, but you can tell from the picture what the priorities of the organization is. And it's not about truth. It's not about accuracy. It's about diversity hires. That's what it looks like on the outside, plain and simple. I'm not saying that that's actually what Google's priorities are. I'm not even going to make a statement on it, cut and clear. I'm just saying it's what it looks like on the outside. Okay, let's move on to our next story. The Olympics are facing a financial fallout following the decision to allow drag queens to dance on a table and seemingly mock religion and the Last Supper. So in case you live under a rock and somehow missed this, the opening ceremonies for the Olympics were just drag queens performing. And at one point, the camera then panned to drag queens sitting on one side of a table, and it looked almost identical to the famous portrait of the Last Supper. This has led a ton of Christians, conservatives, honestly, just common sense people, to be offended and irritated that opening ceremonies had to be this blasphemous. But someone out there is putting their money where their mouth is, because the tech company Ceasefire announced that it cut ties with the Olympics and pulled its advertisements from the games. Here's the full story from the New York Post. It says a tech company swiftly dropped out its Olympic advertising after drag queens and dancers performed an apparent parody of the Last Supper at the 2024 Paris Open ceremonies. So it's a Mississippi-based comms and tech company called Ceasefire, and they posted, or the company posted on X, this: "We are shocked by the mockery of the Last Supper during the opening ceremonies of the Paris Olympics. Ceasefire will be pulling our ads from the Olympics." They did not explain what form of advertisements were pulled or how much they initially forked over to be a part of this, but the CEO of the company said that they don't want to be a part of this anymore. And this is the original tweet right here. You can see it if you're watching. But they went out there and they put their money where their mouth is. And I love it. Because in all honesty, nothing talks louder to these organizations than money, baby. If companies refuse to advertise and people refuse to watch the Olympics because of this blasphemy, or because they don't even want to risk being subjected to these ratchet acts, that's how the Olympics is going to get the message. And I was reading about NBC and their role in all of this before the opening ceremonies had even happened. And to my knowledge, NBC is already quaking in its boots because they can't seem to drive adequate revenue at all for the Olympics. And if we prove a point by not spending money or watching and supporting this, then NBC will be forced not to broadcast this crap, or, even better, the Olympics won't do anything but put their broadcast partners, or anything that puts their broadcast partners and audience in a precarious position. So if you're boycotting, will you let me know in the comments? And how do you proceed to plan just in general? Like, how are you as an individual, as a story seeker, planning to deal with the Olympics after this? Because full disclosure, I just watched the women's gymnastic recaps on TikTok. That's good enough for me. But anyway, I'm interested to hear your POV. And while you're in the comments, will you please be sure to like and subscribe if you're listening, if you're in the listening audience in general. Please leave this video a 5-star review, or this podcast, sorry. Thank you so much. It just means so much to me, and it really helps boost the show. All right, thanks, friends. Let's get into our fourth story today, which is some crayons people insanity. Again, I refer to these people based on their type of hair color and because it kind of sounds like the people I'm describing, but I put this video everywhere and I just try to be sensitive with my language so as not to be demonetized. But our next story. 3 biological men won the top 3 medals in an elite women's cycling division in Washington State. National Review, as usual, did a great write-up on this. So basically, this all took place in Washington State at the Marymore Grand Prix last weekend, or I believe it was a weekend and a half. So it's a little confusing, but there were 6 competitors in total who made it to the podium. So it's 3 teams of 2s. And these are some of the teams. So right here, you have pictured the team that won. And then I'm not sure, somewhere, one of these 2 teams came in second. And then I believe it was this team that came in third, or maybe this was first, second, and third, and these people were just joining in. I'm not entirely sure because this is more the people that, more people in this picture than one. For the listening audience, you can see a bulge. You can see very obviously that not everybody pictured is a biological woman. But what happened was that there were 6 winners and their relay teams. So Jenna Lingwood, the person's name, a biological male, was placed with an actual biological woman, and they placed first. And then Jordan Lothrop and a biological woman placed second, and Eva Lynn, that's 2 separate names, Eva and then Lynn, was competing with a biological woman, and they came in third. That's kind of how this all went down. What's crazy about this is kind of the backdrop. So Jordan Lothrop, I got that wrong. That person placed first with the teammate and competed in the men's division last year, as a heads up. Lingwood, who used to enter men's races as Jimmy as recently as 2018, placed second. And that person, Lingwood, also won a women's masters title in the 2022 cyclocross national championship, which is crazy. And then, quote, Eva Lynn placed third, and that person raced as Henry Lynn for the San Jose State University's men team and switched to the women's team in 2022. My question is, how did anyone let this happen? Shame on the men involved in this. Shame on the women who are knowingly winning because their partner is not a biological woman. And shame on the organization that allows this to happen. Women shouldn't have to leave women's spaces because men are in them. That's sexist. So to anyone decrying this as some sort of victory for tolerance, you're just picking men over women and then defeating everything that first wave feminists like myself stand for. It's nothing to feel good about. And speaking of sad, our final story, it's so sad, but it needs to be reported. At least 12 people, most of them being children, were killed by a rocket that the terrorist organization Hezbollah reportedly sent into Israel. The rocket, reportedly fired by Hezbollah, was targeted at an area in the north of Israel that is composed of a religious minority and hit a children's soccer game. These are the details for you. So at least 12 people, like I said, children mostly between the ages of 10 to 20, were killed when a rocket struck a soccer stadium of sorts. And so this was targeted at the northern Druze town. So Druze are a minority population within Israel, and they predominantly are in the north of Israel, which is where close to the Lebanese border. So The foreign minister was discussing this attack, and now everybody is saying that, we're about to face, or Israel is about to face an all-out war. Therefore, we as Americans are about to face like something of a world war in a way, because Lebanon is connected to pretty much every single Middle Eastern country, and Hezbollah and Hamas, they're both terrorist organizations. They very much work in tandem. They're funded by the same people. And Hezbollah is essentially it's not even a proxy group, it's a direct group from Iran, which is just insanity that we allow this to continue on and we don't say anything. But there's a lot of contention. Obviously, I don't want to sit on this for too long. There's a lot of contention about what to do. Obviously, no one wants war. I don't know about you guys, but I certainly don't want to see war. But here again, you see that Saturday's victims were from a community of Druze, an ethno-religious Arab minority that maintains Arabic as their primary language. So these are people who are Arab, they are Arabic, and yet they are still the ire of terror organizations, even though they only compose 1.6% of Israel's total population. Therefore, they are a minority, which the watermelon people online seem to only care for. But it doesn't matter. Sorry, it doesn't matter. It's just off the table because you sympathize with Jews or you live in Israel and you're a target. That's just so, so sad. And wow, it's moments like this where you can tell the difference between someone who just wants freedom for everyone and someone who's full-blown anti-Semitic, because someone who wants all people to be free, including Palestinians, and hates seeing wars is going to condemn this unequivocally because, this is Arabic people. This is just Jewish people or Israeli people that are just living in Israel getting murdered at their children's soccer game, which is apparently just the worst thing. It is the worst thing in the world. But when it happens in Gaza, it's, oh my gosh, the worst thing in the world. And it is because you're losing life. But if American taxpayer dollars or Israel kills a terrorist, it's like, oh my gosh, all eyes on Rafah. But then we kill a bunch of 10-year-olds in Israel and the world's quiet about it. It's just so annoying. Someone who is going to be blatantly anti-Semitic, they're not going to say anything about this because they like the fact that Israelis and anybody who is Jewish adjacent are dying. So I'm very interested to see who speaks out on this and who doesn't. But anyway, let's end this show on a happy note, okay? We have a full week of shows ahead of us, guys. And if you're a real one, you know that's awesome. If you're a true story seeker, you're excited for this. And also, if you're one of the true ones, will you drop a medal in the comments, okay? I like to know who my real people are. Again, be sure to like, subscribe, send this video to a friend, send this podcast to a friend, or post about how much you love this show on social media. Post like a little clip of your favorite soundbite or post a clip of you watching or listening to the podcast. That'd be awesome. And if you do, tag me so I can repost you, okay? Anyway, I will see you guys back here tomorrow. Thanks again for tuning in. Bye, friends.